Okay, Jack, Some Future is back. I've had a little bit of a hiatus, but we are back. I'm really, really excited. We're going to talk about The Singularity is Near, which came out sometime back, I think like almost a year ago or so. There's been some pieces on this, but frankly, there wasn't a ton of chatter on it. And I'm just wanted to bring it up because he really talks about some really, really interesting things. By the way,
Mhm.
we have talked about Ray Kurzweil in the past for anybody who
Several times.
doesn't doesn't remember those podcast episodes way back when. Ray Kurzweil, frankly, when you talk about a futurist, when you think about a futurist, I think if a layman wanted to know about a futurist or even has an idea of a futurist, they probably think of Ray Kurzweil. He is a computer scientist. He's an author, of course, entrepreneur, a futurist. He's an inventor. He's been involved in things like optical character recognition, text to speech synthesis, speech recognition. He invented a keyboard, so many different accolades. And actually, he was a part of Google's AI capabilities for a really long time. I'm unsure if he's still actually doing that, but this is the guy who, if there is a modern day futurist that people talk on, he's going to discuss anything, people are going to go ahead and listen. So, the thing that I want to talk about today, of course, is the sequel, 2005's The Singularity is Near. So, of course, I know you know what the singularity is, but the concept for folks who don't know is when technology and mankind get so close that it's going to be hard to distinguish between what makes us computers and what makes us mankind. And the fundamental thought processes behind this. And actually, I have some graphs. I wish actually his second book had these graphs. I'm going to actually share this with you real quick. So just give me a little bit as I share this. So just a moment.
Well, I'll just tell you one thing. I told
Yeah, go
someone
ahead.
about this recently. It's like I was telling people to add this to your book list. Even
Yes,
people who haven't heard of Ray Kurzweil. I said to add it. It's a fascinating read.
it really is, and it's not just this. So that what the concepts in the singularity is near, and what he really brought forth was he sort of used all these different graphs. Probably the biggest one, what people think about, is the things like Moore's law, as well as logarithmic. This first graph here, which is how we went from the initial parts of life all the way to the computer, and you can see, of course, Homo erectus and human ancestors walking upright right here, and Moore's law, of course, which is doubling computer speed. So what he saw is that life is entering this novel way where technology is growing at a fast pace and it's intersecting with humanity, and it's leading to possibly a different life form, if you will. Now, the thing
Mhm.
is with Ray is that this singularity, this bold prediction, he's been doing this for a while. He's been making predictions about the future of technology for a very long time. So he's about 90% accuracy, frankly, when it comes to his predictions. So for a futurist, that's pretty good. Us futurists typically aren't that great, but he's definitely on it. So here's just the thing. Talked about the rise of the internet as well as mobile computing. He talked about how AI language models were going to be, speech to text, something I use every day, was really going to take off. He talked about AR, augmented wearables. He talked about digital assistants, of course. All of this is happening. All of this is
Mhm.
happening right now. He actually just barely missed, or not necessarily barely missed, but self-driving cars he thought would be everywhere. Of course, they haven't completely made it. The phone was going to arrive a little bit early. He sort of missed that. But Ray has been on top of all things predictions, and I'm really stoked to be talking, of course, now about his next book, where he's going to talk about other predictions, which, of course, is the sequel to the Singularity is Near. Singularity is Near. Great book title.
Yeah. You never think too hard about that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to bring up some of these things, and I'm going to ask you some questions. We'll go like chapter by chapter, kind of just to, to give it some thoughts here. The first chapter really breaks down what he describes as the six stages, or the six epochs. I actually do have a view of this. The epoch of physical chemistry. Physical chemistry is, and this is it right here, at atomic structures. Then eventually we have biology, brains become a part of neural patterns. Technology now connects to the brains. Eventually, there's the merge or the singularity between human beings and technology. And then the universe is completely interconnected, and we're the Borg or something sort of along those lines. And then it goes, yeah, and then it goes into like reinventing intelligence and like what it means to be human beings. So this stuff is really wild when you really think about it. Um, but it's not too far away. So I'm just wondering, now I'll pause a little bit. We'll talk about the other chapters in just a little bit. But what do you think about these concepts? It's a lot of like life form to then to computation, then, to human beings and what happens when we do it. We're already getting there. We're maybe past the Turing test. What
Mhm.
do you think about sort of where we are in this stage? Is the singularity truly indeed near?
I think so. Right. I mean, it's so, I teach about artificial intelligence, right?
Mm,
And it's something that I talk about a lot, right? I think that there's some questions, right, when it comes to this, right, as well, is still think that we're a ways off from AGI. It seems that a lot of artificial intelligence has stalled in its progression. And
mm,
you've seen that with a lot of the generative AI that's coming out. And so while yes, they're meeting different benchmark frameworks, it doesn't seem that we're that much closer to AGI. And part of that is due to the hardware that is in existence right now
mm,
and just the evolution that needs to take place, whether it be quantum, whether it be other elements of things that will make it more advanced. I can see where, Ray says what AGI by 2029. I think
mm.
that's very ambitious. And so that's something that I mean, we have 4 years to be able for it to freaking prove him right or wrong right now. So
It's true.
so
Yeah.
it's not it's 20 years off is what he's saying. So he's saying it's 4 years. I don't see that, but I'll be interested to see how I've read his books. I read it. I'm interested to see how he thinks we will get to that point. I still think we're a ways off.
I do agree with that. And I think and that's where, we're going to talk about the second half, which is I think a little bit more anodyne and a little bit less sort of crazy futurist that we're talking about. I also agree that AGI is somewhat not necessarily maybe far off, but I think it's more complex than we really think. And I think it's going to be similar to kind of what's going on with the Turing test and computation right now is we're kind of like unsure if ChatGPT and cloud and these conversational user interfaces, UIs, are driving and past the Turing test, or is it just kind of slightly mocking us as human beings? What it truly is the ghost of the machine. But I'm with you. I think honestly the singularity is near as I continue to read it. I found it less plausible, but more I felt better about life. So okay, so that was the first 3 chapters, okay? The
Yeah,
last
more
3
predictive.
chapters. Yes.
Mm,
Yes. Well, I
yeah.
think he's still in the same directions. I mean, no matter, Ray is fantastic. We are moving towards AGI. We are going leaps and bounds in terms of technology and really figuring out how well we can drive some of the future of biotech, the future of longevity, the future of healthcare, the future of materials. I mean, a lot of what he's describing in the next few chapters, which I'm about to, of course, discuss, is on the horizon, or it's possible, or it's going to be coming. And in some ways, I'm less enthused about AGI, and I'm actually more enthused that AI will find itself in all of these different industry subsegments, and it doesn't have to be all agentic and automated and everything. It's just going to be helping us tinker on the edges to innovations in each and every industry. And of course, I know that's something that you do each and every day with your job too. But
Mhm.
let's just go, okay, chapter 4, chapter 5, and chapter 6 is really more, and I don't know if you ever read Steven Pinker's The Better Angels of Our Nature. Steven Pinker, who's world-renowned cognitive psychologist, him and Ray actually both talk about the brain. But this 2011 book talks about, frankly, the world is not bad. Less violence, poverty is going down, and Ray Kurzweil says these same exact things in the next couple chapters. Poverty rates are going down, literacy is going up, life expectancy is going up. The world is just shaping up to be better along with the investments in these technologies. And it's allowing like a substrate for this singularity to actually be meaningful and make sense. Because if you have a sort of a chaotic or tumultuous world, it's going to be hard to kind of get us on the other side of this thing. But he's creating a space for humanity to do better here. So there's very much a better angels of our nature here that he talks about. The next couple chapters is actually exactly what we were talking about earlier, where he's discussing, everything from genomics, CRISPR, of course, stem cells, and even what he calls the bridge to immortality theory,
I
where we're
saw that.
using biotechnology not only to stay healthy, using nanotechnology for cell repair. Of course, we've been talking about that for a while. And then eventually brain control interfaces, which of course I've known we've talked about on the podcast before. Maybe we should do an update on that, where
Mhm,
we're augmenting our intelligence. And I think that's when things get really futuristic and
mhm,
sci-fi. So he talks a little bit about the peril and how to deal with it, and then even has a back and forth with an AI Cassandra.
mhm.
But frankly, I thought the Singularity is near was a little more profound than this one. I thought it was, yeah, it's coming, says some interesting stuff, but frankly, I agree with you. I think the devil's is in the details when it comes to the articulation of where the AI is going. And
Yeah.
frankly, I think, and you kind of hinted it, and so I'm interested in your thoughts here. Maybe it's not AGI or for us to pay attention to, and maybe it is just AI embedded into all these particular industries, and perhaps maybe the singularity is near won't happen until quantum computing, really starts to take off, which I think will increase Moore's law that much further. But I don't know. What did you think of the not only the final few chapters, but do you agree the world is getting better and we can just make this stuff happen beyond AGI and not only in 2029, but or what do you think about the idea that quantum computing might actually be the thing that's going to lead us to the eventual board that we all be?
Well, we've talked about quantum computing before, right? There are
Yes.
questions whether we will ever truly achieve quantum computing outside of some small use cases, but then that's just what some people believe. What I found with Ray was that he was just I feel like he was just very overly optimistic,
Mm,
and not only in what he was assuming would happen, but also in the dates that he was putting forward. 2029 for AGI, 2030s, 2040s when we will be merging with AI, right? Having this where we are, I think he says even in the next 10 years, we're going to get to the point where we will have all these customized medicines that can increase our longevity. That's great. But I also feel like, yeah, that's great if you have the money for it, right?
yes.
I think of more of an Elysium side of things as opposed
True.
to a very it's open for everyone, right? This is still going to be a very expensive technology when it first comes out. Obviously, they're not going to offer it to everyone, and so I think he's just overly optimistic. And while some of his things may come to pass, it's not going to come true for a majority of the world anytime soon. And so that's something that you have to be. It's very clear, right? When he talks about when he first, his first book, right? He talked about how AI will kind of help take over and like bring this equality. I think that's one thing that he mentions that there's that equality that will exist. I don't really see that as much in his book. He's very
Mm,
optimistic in this, and I think some of the most profound things he writes about is this, how health will change, how technology will exponentially get better. You showed the slides, but to me, I think he's saying that society will kind of merge into this hybrid human AI civilization. Will merge it with AI, right? I don't know if that will happen. And I also think that, while the world, yes, it seems like it's getting better, there's also some true concerns. We could be headed for World War III with like China, right? That's something that could happen and could drastically affect these predictions. And that could happen in the next 10, 20 years. So at the same time frame that Ray is suggesting, right? And you're seeing some of the dangers of AI, all of the drone warfare with automated drones and things like that. So to me, I think he's overly optimistic. I think that his timelines are very, very ambitious. And then, his human AI merger, I think that's really neat. And this idea of like post scarcity. And we're seeing some elements of that. So like one thing you and I talked about before is like robot farming and things like that, where it's, vertical farming, things that are happening that are increasing the abundance of food across the world. But there's also a lot of perils that are associated with AI that he really just doesn't hint on. And so I think there's the two we've talked about before, the two camps of where the future of AI will lead. And I think he's very much in the camp of all sunshine and rainbows. not looking at the negative side effects. That's
No,
just my
totally agree. I think he doesn't spend enough time on the perils. He doesn't spend enough time on the sort of the political and geopolitical dynamics that actually could thwart these potential directions. He does, I do want to give voice that he does talk about things like solar power, geothermal, all the various renewable energy that allows us to propel, the future of this technology. I want to give him that voice there because that's how exactly you're going to pump this out. But with that comes issues. We're building data centers right now. We're finding out how costly that is. We're finding out how AI is changing the work life and creating issues with skill sets and whatnot. So I do agree. I think there's some caution here. We'll be paying really close attention, I think, to the things like nanotechnology. Is longevity, going to be increased? I think even his ideas on self-assembling megastructures and eventually, of course, those BCIs, the brain control interfaces. We've seen some of that already. We've showed some of these videos before of these people controlling things like appendages and drones and whatnot with their brains. This stuff is on its way. I do think, though, Ray, sort of a pie in the sky positive view. But frankly, here, I think we're real about the futures that we see. And I think when we look at the future, I think we should think deeply about all the potential effects, both positive and negative, that can get us to see if truly the singularity is truly near.
I'll just pull out one more fact that I think that just kind of shows his utopian view. He said that, well, and then this is almost dystopian, the fact that he said he thinks that all percent of jobs will be automated by 2030. That is a very strong statement to say that. 90% of jobs by 2030. Like these are very ambitious things that he's saying. And I mean, look, that's 5 years away. We said 4 years away for another prediction. That's 5 years away from now. So, that's, he talks about that, and he talks about, how economies will need to change. UBI will need to be initiated. So he says all of these things. So he does have utopian, but he also has some dystopian views, but he also thinks that we're going to solve those. So he says, oh, we'll be able to solve that. So I think it's a mixture, but I do think he is very ambitious and utopian in some of his views.
Agreed. I think just because he's connected to Google and connected to some of these initiatives, I think it makes sense for him to look at these things. He's very much a language person. He's very much a brains and thinking person. He understands neural networks really well, and he does have some concepts around AI and ethics and its implementations. I think, frankly, he'd be a perfect person to put on our AI team. Hopefully he gets to live. Maybe his longevity stuff keeps to happening. But I think we also need folks that think in the geopolitical factor too, think in the economic factor, think in how it will impact us from a society-wide plane. Futures has to be broad. We actually have to look at not just the wide-ranging technology and how it can be delivered, but actually all the various ways that it can impact society in positive and negative and neutral ways. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to paying attention to see these timelines. But I'm with you. I just think he's just maybe a little bit off.